I do. Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Okay. Um, Part of getting reoriented, um, when people begin to hear about meditation, in fact, mostly the imagery is people sitting, squatting on the floor, in one difficult or another pose, depending upon whether they're doing it Zen style with or without a stool, or
Yeah,
the
yeah.
big futons that they have in some Japanese places as well as in Tibet. But mostly those are Western devices, those big fat pillows. Um, that it is good to have the butt raised so that the legs can naturally fall easy so that you can sit. But that whole system was designed and developed in a time when there was not much furniture or even use for any furniture.
Okay.
That is only in cold climates where the floors get cold that you want to get your butt off the floor. And so we've got furniture, but now furniture somehow, that kind of materialism is spread all over. There's a whole lot of type houses that are still traditional, but um, the furniture is really creeping in, modern furniture. It almost looks like that they've stuck on Art Deco, that whatever couldn't be sold in 1955 is now on sale in Thailand. So maybe they're still trying to clean out old stock. In any case, um, your your posture, it has some benefit, but it's not actually part of the thing much at all. Uh, the rising, falling, touching, sitting that is famous in Mahasi has to do specifically with the rising and the falling of the breathing, as well as the touching, which is the tactile sensations on the body. And then the sitting is the proprioceptic system of knowing what posture your body is in without having to open your eyes or look in a mirror. That you know what posture your body is in, if it's slumping or if the head is down or whatever, that we know what the posture of the body is in. And so that's why it's valuable in the practice of becoming more and more aware of the body and the postures that it's in. But those postures that it's in can be trained with any particular posture. For instance, the posture that you see me in, you see that generally most of the time. This is the posture that I'm in with the arm on the balcony and the hands together.
The
And
polite, right?
pardon?
It's called the polite gestures, I think, right? I'm not sure.
I don't know about that. It's very comfortable and it's also maintainable through practice.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so that's what that uh, the rising, falling, touching, and then the sitting. The sitting part is what we're talking about. Is what is the postures of the body? How do you maintain that? And when you move, how do you move? Now this is kind of advanced stuff,
Hmm.
but it also needs to become part of the awareness right from the beginning. So then, in the practice, would be that when you reach out and grasp, hold like that coffee cup, that you know that you're doing that. Whenever you put your hand to your face, you know that you're doing that. And so you become more stable and you begin to do this actually throughout the day rather than so you're beginning to learn to maintain posture without having a particular primary posture that you're trying to attain. Rather, the attainment is to see what you're doing right now. Begin to see things, see the posture that the body is in. And I would like to thank you for reminding me of that because I generally, by the time I get up into sitting, I'm talking about proprioceptic, and then I'm not getting into that part about this is part of our reality, is the posture of the body, what we're doing with it, and is it comfortable? That's one of the most important qualities, is can we attain comfort? Because if we can continuously find ways of being comfortable, then even when they grab us and start waterboarding us or something, we can still remain comfortable. Keep the mind very high quality is basically what I'm saying. And we do this through various trainings. And one of the trainings is mindfulness of the body, of the full body, especially in the sense of posture, of know where your hands are and what they're doing, and keep track of them. It's almost like beginning to train the hands as if they were a dog that needed to be trained.
And I do have a question about the knowing, because you're saying the know, the you know, and because it's funny because it's like hilarious in a sense. I was listening to this YouTube channel, Hillside Hermitage. It's a great channel, and they talk about that too. Uh, and it kind of opened my eyes because, in a sense, knowing doesn't need thinking. Like it doesn't need thoughts, right? Is that correct? Because when I meditate or when I'm at work, um, I know that I'm sitting down. I know that I'm typing, but I don't need to think about it. Uh, and and there's some times where in meditation, whether it be sitting or walking, um, I feel like I'm watching myself, like, but
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, like not thinking, but just
Observing.
yeah,
But
there, that,
it's not the
yeah,
self, but it's not the self that you're
yeah,
observing. It's the
okay,
constituent components that give rise to the belief in a self. But really, what we're doing is examining the components. And as we begin to examine those components deeper and deeper, we recognize that each one of these components has no self on its own, therefore, collective together. We have to think of it as in system theory. You probably heard that a system is the whole, or the sum is greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. That's the way of looking at it. Okay. And so, in that regard, what really humanity is all of the complexities of the human body plus something else, and that something else is life or consciousness. But we've got the arrangement up here so that we have a great deal more capabilities than lower animals, and yet we continue to behave like lower animals. It's almost like that we don't even use the best part of the mind, that we're always relying upon the easy part, the part that snakes and alligators had, the ones that, if an alligator can do it and the human can do it, then it's that alligator part of the man's brain that does it. Think of it that way, that you've got 100% alligator back there, but you've got some other things going on too. You've got language that the
mm-hmm.
alligators don't have. And you also have the ability to see clearly and organize. This is what we would call wisdom. This is the frontal cortex, and that's the part that people don't pay much attention to. An example of that is a whole lot of people are dissatisfied with being at home because of the coronavirus, right? But they're just looking at their gut feeling rather than looking at it from the wisdom. The wisdom says, "Hey, man, we got some time off. Let's yippee ki Let's have a fall. Let's pop a beer or take out the old violin and let's have a good time today. Let's not worry about tomorrow. Let's actually take Jesus' advice for once." The Christians might tell themselves, and have no worry about tomorrow. Let's enjoy the day. We got the day off. And guess what?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be a day off too, and we don't even have to think about it much beyond that. Just enjoy the day. And that takes some training. Why? Because we're actually taking control of it through wisdom to recognize what a marvelous opportunity this is, which means that we have to play down these old fears.
Mm.
The old fears, the reptilian brain that keeps us unhappy and upset and trying to solve problems that we really don't have. In fact, the new problem, if there is one, is how to enjoy this present moment. And the answer to that is flip that switch from a bad attitude to a good attitude. It's that easy. A change of attitude out of the old reptilian ways of thinking, out of the instinctual way, and back into being human form. Now, when we begin to understand Paticca Samuppada in its depths, we understand that there's a place where we stop being human and start becoming that animal again. That switch gets flipped back. And that's then that means that there's a self that needs to be preserved. The self-preservation instinct kicks in, and now we've got all of those feelings. What feelings? The same feelings that alligators had when they were under attack. Except that generally alligators were under attack so that they had that going on at the right time. To where humans are not really under attack, we just feel like we're under attack. And we're not under attack. But it takes that wisdom to actually see that this is really good. Being away from others, being in seclusion is a wholesome thing. It's really marvelous.
Yeah.
Let's enjoy it. Let's sit down and watch the breath and pay attention to this toy, this marvelous piece of machinery called the human body, and learn to play with it. Learn to manipulate it. Learn to sit up straight. Learning to breathe well. Learning to laugh at almost every hilarious thing that you find, and you find almost everything hilarious. And that what we can't find hilarious, we understand belongs to the reptilian brain, and there he is just really attached to it. An example of that is that very few people will say that Donald Trump has an extraordinary good quality. He is solid entertainment. He is so funny. But we have to not be attached to what he's saying. If we're attached to what he's saying, then we'd fall into camps about they love him on one side or they hate him on the other. But the reality is that he's an insane stand-up comic.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely catches your attention in an extreme way. I mean, it's unbelievable, which is why it's funny.
So if you find yourself exposed to Donald Trump, begin to see what a hilarious situation that he creates.
Yeah.
But we have to not get attached to the possible outcomes of his actions. Just stay with the hilarity of his contradictions, for instance, from day to day.
Yeah.
And understand that it doesn't matter how bad I feel about Donald Trump or how good I feel about Donald Trump. That's not going to influence Donald Trump. I do not own that sport team called Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Which is identification. In fact, anything that we identify with, we become that. And when we become that, when it suffers, we suffer. So if we see ourselves as Democrats, when every time anything that happens to the disadvantage of Democrats, I feel bad, I'm obligated because I am Democrat.
Yeah.
But exactly the same thing is true for Republican. I am Republican, which means everything that bad happens to Republican, I've got to feel bad because I am Republican. When we recognize then that attachment to and belonging to political parties is actually quite dangerous for everyone,
Hmm.
so that no one wants to be part of a political party, then wisdom is going to start reigning. But so long as there's attachment to political parties, that's tribalism.
Yeah, and I actually said this the other day to my friend that equality will never be based on status. It can't. Like nobody is everybody's the same, but like when people try to find equality based upon a status, it's just not gonna work because no one's the same on that level because it's not real
Well,
in a sense.
actually, what we need to do is to take the unreal part of the magic part out. The magic part is the stat. Take the stat out, and
Yep,
we're left with us. Because
exactly.
that's the reality of the situation, that there's only us, and all of that status stuff is a falsehood. That's exactly how the Brahmins tried to gain and maintain their status in India, starting about 300 years before the time of the Buddha. And that their status was is that we are Brahmin, we were born Brahmin, only we can do the ceremonies and stuff for our religion because we were born Brahmin. And you were not born Brahmin, we were born Brahmin.
Yeah.
And so the answer to the question of, well, so what is that we were born Brahmin because we were good in the past, and you were born not Brahmin because you were not good in the past. And so that's how the law or the belief in the law of karma got started, was in order for the Brahmins to maintain their status.
Hmm.
And that's not the only lie that status seekers have told to try to gain status. In fact, everything about status is based upon a pack of lies. And that pack of lies, then, is what generally governments are founded upon. If you're an egg thief, what's the biggest egg you can steal? Well,
If I'm
where's
a
the biggest hen house? And the biggest hen
okay.
house is always the government. And so there's always eggs to steal from the big hen house. That's the mentality.
Yeah.
So the right way to look at it, though, is that places like hen houses then always divides into them versus us, or in that status position of, even if we're the underdog, we hold that at high status because we're elected or whatever. So in that regard, it always has to do then with status seeking. That's false. It's false pride. Basically what people are really looking for is happiness and enjoyment and contentment in their lives, and they think status is going to give that to them, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Status seeking begets just more status seeking.
Yeah. Way too much purpose.
And they they all wind up singing the song of can't get no satisfaction, because
Yeah.
it's almost like a pyramid. Even the guy who's at the top of the pyramid is still got people grabbing him by the legs, trying to pull him down so that they can be on top.
Hmm.
And you see that that was a drawing. I don't know, but I think it's Dante's Inferno. That is a pile of humanity that is all piled themselves into a pyramid, with one person being at the top, trying to reach heaven, and he can't do it, even when he's at the top of the peak. And yet, while he's trying to, let us say, gain the benefits of being at the top of the heap, he's got four or five others trying to drag him down because they too want to be at the top of the heap. Meanwhile, everybody under them is getting stepped on and pushed down in the pyramid.
Mhm.
But then you find a few people wandering away from that pyramid. They wander away. Why do they wander away? Is because they see what that pyramid is doing to them and they leave it. That pyramid of competition. But even after we leave that, the external competition, we find where the base of that competition is. The base of that competition is an unsettled feeling that we have inside that can also be labeled as anxiety. But the competition arises out of trying to eliminate anxiety for ourselves. An example is if someone insults you, you feel anxiety. And so anxiety gives you the sense that you've got to protect yourself because there is danger. But the reality is the danger, he may in fact want you to feel danger. But if you recognize you don't have to feel danger, that's your choice. And then you can find something really funny to say back to him instead of feeling danger and having to respond in a competitive, I'm better than you are way, which
Yeah.
causes arguments, okay? So here we're going from out of the reptilian brain into wisdom and recognize there's always a better way of doing things, but we have to take a look to see what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
And
what sati is all about, is wakey, wakey. Wake up. Look at what's going on. Look at what you're doing. And then we have good choices about what we're going to do.
yeah. I do have a question about, because you keep mentioning the danger, and that's always an interesting thing because when you say danger, I think about, for some reason, like meditation and how in the sutta where metta was mentioned, uh, the Buddha talks about how if someone comes to like a forest and is chopping, your bandits are chopping you up limb by limb, like I don't know if that's, I don't know, but he says that if you feel hate for that person, it's like you haven't practiced the meta like to the extent that it's meant to be or to understand it correctly. But it's like, I wonder in that moment, because you say when we're in danger but we're not, but what about when we are in danger? You know what I mean? What do we do then? Because like our bodies will be in danger and people get really scared by that.
Yes. And in fact, that's what the self-preservation instinct is all about.
Okay.
And it's the recognition of danger. And sometimes if we're wise to see danger,
Okay.
then we can become protected from it. If you see, even if you are smart enough to see an arrow being shot directly at you, you have time to step out of the way.
Matrix.
Not much time, but it's been known to happen throughout centuries. In fact, getting a spear thrown at you the spears are actually quite slow. They're easy to stand out of the way of. You see it coming. But if you see it coming and freeze or become afraid of it, then you're probably going to get hit.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you can get out of the way, then you're safe.
Okay. Okay. Because I'm wondering, but like, what if we really, like, someone is really threatening me? Because that's a real problem. Like, that's a real thing that can happen in
Well,
a sense.
there are many, many different possibilities. You're not being clear enough. So let's go through some of them. One of them would be,
Millions.
right. One of them would be going through some government sponsored resettlement program. Another one
Okay.
is, now I'm thinking a Jefferson Airplane and 50 ways to leave your lover. Okay. Sneak out the back, Jack. Make a new plan, Stan. And so just set yourself free. So that would be the way to do it, is to get out of the way. That's what the Buddha would say, in the sense of take a hike. This place is dangerous. In fact, the Buddha recommends to stay out of places that have one of four qualities. And that
Okay.
is that there's a war or strife going on where people are out carrying weapons. Number two is that if there is a flood. And number three would be if there is a drought or famine. And another one would be if there is pestilence,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
disease. And in other words, if the monks know that
Yeah,
a particular place is suffering under one of these conditions, the
yeah.
word gets out not just to the monks but to everybody to stay away from that place.
Okay.
Okay, and yet fools rush in where the angels fear to tread. And why is that fear there? Because it's healthy, wise fear based upon the reality of the situation.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
there's one more point to make, and that is that, hey man, you're going to die.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
are going to die.
Hmm.
And if you're wise, you'll choose when, where, and how to do that wisely. But most people choose to die by accident. Why?
Okay.
Because they try to postpone their death, and the doctors in the hospital do everything they can to postpone their death. Because, number one, when somebody dies at the hands of a doctor, the doctor, number one, feels bad, and number two, can't make more money off of it. So they work really hard to try to keep you alive.
Yeah, yeah.
And
That
yet
is,
they
yep.
still make a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, they do.
So that's why everybody dies. No matter what the medicine comes to, people are going to die. It may slow down the death rate, but everybody's going to die.
Yeah.
Once you know that, now you can begin to understand, well, you've got some control over that. But most people don't want to think about it because it brings up fear. The fear of death is possibly the greatest of fear, and in fact, it's the most basic. That's the survival. And this one, you're not going to survive.
I'm sorry, but I know it's just funny because it's like so true. You know.
This
Um,
is part of the teaching of the Buddha is to become fearless. Become
yeah.
fearless in the face of death. Let's conquer, two, that part of the human brain that puts us in a state of fear, because you're feeling fear right now when I'm talking about it, and yet the frontal cortex knows, hey, Dhammarato is not going to grab through the the screen and grab you by the throat and choke you just to make a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet the
Because
fear is there. Just
like
thinking about it until we
yeah.
begin to think about it more and more with the frontal cortex and recognize, hey, we're going to die.
Yeah. And I was about to, well, it was all gonna, it's all tying in really, which is like all the things that have been on my mind in a sense. Uh, because I keep reading about the different practices that the Buddha taught, and for example, the mindfulness of death, um, which not to. He's obviously not saying to overthink about it, but he is saying to be. You already know that you're gonna do that. Like you're. It's not like it's like you're kind of like already know it inside, and so don't try to hide from that knowledge in a sense. Um, that intuitive feeling that you know that it's going to end, whatever that means, because I don't know what that really means in a sense. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it,
Yes. So that's basically then getting down to working with the feelings so that we
yeah,
can control them through wisdom.
yes,
Even the
yes,
fear of death, we can conquer the fear of death. And in fact, if we conquer the fear of death, and death itself has no sting, then what's the point of getting angry?
yeah,
And if you are angry at the guy who is cutting your arms and your legs off,
yeah,
then what state of mind is that worth being in? It reminds me of the story as part of the Life of Brian. Do you know the Life of Brian, Monty Python movie?
no,
Okay, the guy's in the hole, and the people are chasing Brian, trying to make him the Messiah, and he falls into this hole, this big ditch in the ground, possibly a well that no longer has water. And in the bottom of this hole is an old monk. Somebody's trying to call, and I don't know who. Sid. We'll just bring him in to the call if you don't mind. I don't know who this is. So hello.
Hello.
Do you
hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and see you, but there's some big black thing between you and the screen.
Yeah.
There, that's better. Okay. So what is your name?
Julian.
Julian. Well, this is Dennis.
Hello, Dennis.
And we were just about to talk about a story. And now I don't remember what the story was that I was about to tell.
The Life of Brian.
Pardon?
The Life of Brian.
Oh, yes, the Life of Brian story. Okay. So Brian falls on this monk that's in the bottom of a hole, and he jumps up in anger and angry at Brian for falling on him because he has been silent for 20 years. And when Brian fell on him, he said, "Oh," he made a sound. And then he got angry about it. And then he got angry at Brian. It's a very funny scene. But that's exactly how we do that part of it. We think that we've got something, and then some surprise will happen, and we recognize, no, there's more work to be done here. And so that story about the monk in the hole is a very good one for us to understand how easy it is for us to fall back into the old patterns of the mind. That's as long as that old monk was sitting there with no place to go and nothing to do and had created a sort of a miracle around himself, he was good. But when Brian fell on him, he lost mindfulness, and he didn't like the fact that he had lost mindfulness, or sati. But if he had really good sati, he would say, "Never mind, get off of me, Brian," and then he would go back into silence. But no, he has to go into that part of the feeling that we were given that feeling system as part of our DNA, comes out of the past, and then it's nurtured by our families so that we now continue to feel the way that we are taught to feel and the way that we are naturally prone to feel, so that when we become adults, we wind up not being able to feel the way we want to feel. Instead, we feel the way that we have been in the habit of feeling.
Conditioning is strong.
Yes, exactly so. So this is part of what the practice is to wake up to those habits, to wake up to the patterns that we have, and to see what's happening in this present moment. And that most of what's happening in this present moment is that this present moment is actually quite a nice place. It's quite marvelous. Let's take a look around and see what marvels there are here available to us if we would only come out of our thought-feeling complex and be in the present moment. And we need to practice that over and over and over again. This is the most important quality for the beginning student, is to develop sati as often as he can, not just while sitting on the cushion, but to wake up, to have that sati, to wakey, get the mind going so that we can see what's going on in this present moment. That then gives rise to right effort. And the right effort is to throw out what's in the mind, to say, aha, I see you. Now, that's a very important statement about I see you. This is what the Buddha referenced when he had crawled out of the creek and then sat down in Bodh Gaya. He would say, in his development of what the Four Noble Truths came to be, he would say, I see you, Mara. I see you. And this is exactly what we need to do in our own practice, is to be able to see the Mara. And that we can understand the Mara in the regard of the hindrances, being in the past, being worried, thinking about the future, wanting things we don't have, like enlightenment.
We are good at that, right?
Wanting things we don't have, or trying to get rid of things that are, let us say, inconvenient to put up with. And so these are the basic hindrances. And that Anapanasati is all about first cleaning this stuff out. And so we use the breath as an anchor. And the anchor then has more than just what a lot of people think about it. But the Buddha, when he's actually describing the Anapanasati Sutta, talks about the deep breath, which means this is a conscious, intentional, own purpose kind of breathing that we need to get going. And that some students will ask, well, is this belly or diaphragm breathing, or is it in the chest? The answer is yes to both of those, and additionally to the shoulders. So that when we take a deep breath, we can take a full deep breath. And then when we let the air out, we kind of sigh like an emptying of a bag that helps then to push a lot of pollution out. And so deep breathing is actually a curative thing, as well as getting the frontal cortex in gear so that we can get a mind that's fit for work, that's not drowsy. And so this is one's right effort, is to take the time to take a deep breath, to intentionally do that. If we practice that often enough, it becomes actually energetic, that we begin to naturally start breathing more deeply, almost to the point that the deep breath itself precedes the sati. That our waking up is the fact that we're now taking a deep breath, as opposed to the other way around, is wake up and take a deep breath. So it becomes kind of automatic. In that regard, the right effort is working really well.
So it's a new conditioning, in fact.
Pardon?
It's a new conditioning, because you take a deep breath and it triggers kind of the sati.
Right, exactly so. In that regard, this is a new habit that has to be developed, because our old conditioning is fairly well dug in.
Mm.
And so we have to go against our own grain in a way.
Mm.
And so it's reconditioning the mind. Precisely, that's what we're doing. And that the main conditioning that we're changing is the attitude. The attitude from being a loser, being a victim, having someone else do it to me, into accepting our own responsibility and rising to the challenge, knowing that we can do it. So we get an air of, I can do it, or the feeling of success. This is part of the quality of gladdening the mind, which is step 10 of Anapanasati. So step 9 of Anapanasati is the wake up, the sati, to see what the mind is doing in this moment, to pay attention to what's going on. Another way of saying it is to restart up the investigation, to start investigating, to see what's going on, recognizing that, in fact, the mind has wandered away from the breath. If that was the intention to watch the breath, then we wake up to the mind has wandered away from the breath. Eventually, we get put up to the point of looking at satisfaction. I'm completely satisfied in this moment. And to now, in the next moment, I'm not satisfied. How did I get out of the state of satisfaction into the state of unsatisfaction? How can I get myself back into the state of satisfaction? So in that regard, the teaching of the Buddha is as simple as a light switch. It's either on or it's off. And most of the time, the people have the light switch off, which means they're not getting enough air, which means the reptilian part of their brain is operating in the functions of survival and in the functions of not paying close attention to what's happening. But this practice then is the continuously of turning that light switch from off to on, of going from living in a life of daydreaming and full of feelings into waking up, sati, paying attention, look at what's going on. Eventually that leads to a state of joy. And that eventuality doesn't have to take long, because we feel good being free from all of the rubbish of the past, so that we begin to like being in the present moment. It's almost a relief, like, wow, oh, I feel so much better. And so it's a relief to be free from the hindrances. So when we're able to see the hindrances, that's when the Buddha would say, I see you, Mara. I see that stuff. And by pointing it out, seeing it, that means we're no longer caught in it. We have pulled ourselves out of it.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Can we stay? Is that good to stay perpetually in this state with the switch on? I think. Do we not need also the switch off from time to time? Because bad and good cannot. Well, good cannot exist without bad. So if we stay good all the time, is that even possible?
Well, you're making the choice of good and bad.
Well, right now I'm not making so much choices.
Okay. That one of the ways that we can look at it is that the switch doesn't operate from good and bad. It operates in a different realm in the sense of the choice. And the choice would be between being in this present moment or being in the past. And in the sense being subject to all of the habits that we've been in. And that one of the habits that we normally have is the habit of being a judgment machine. We're judgmental. We go around making choices, good and bad, all the time. And now we're coming to the point of saying, okay, well, I'm going to flip that switch from being judgmental into being non-judgmental. And now I'm no longer making the choice between is it good, is it bad, but rather the choice of this is nice, this is satisfying. I don't have to decide whether that stuff over there is good or bad anymore, because it's not me. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
But I jumped in your talk. Is that not a problem?
No. No.
Okay.
No, it's not. No.
Okay,
He does this. He's done it in the past.
Okay. I didn't want to disturb.
No, it's all right. In fact, anything that I tell you, Dennis has either already heard it before, so it's good to remember and reflect upon it, or he hasn't heard it before, in which case it's new for him as well as you. So I don't see anything. If you've got questions, that's okay.
Thank you.
I like it when you look at me, but other than
Oh.
that,
It helped me to focus to stay on one point of the table.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
It's helping me to focus when I'm staring at one point of the table. But
Okay, well, you can find one point of the screen to, in fact,
I
perhaps
can
the
do.
little white dot that says the camera is on.
That's fine.
That would be good. All right. So anyway, sure, I'm willing to answer questions about this because we're actually talking about basic practice, and that I'm kind of big on basic practice because it's really hard for the students to really start to practice the basics correctly. And so talking about it over and over again is actually quite delightful. I like it. I like talking about it. And that I appreciate the brilliance of the Buddha in the way that he put this package together. That's what makes it quite a joy to teach. And I also gain great joy from the students at two levels. One is just that they laugh at my jokes. And then the other one is when they really, really start to see the Dhamma. When they really, after 8, 10, 14, or 20 sessions with me, sometimes I've got students, in fact, that are 40 and 50 times they've called and made good friends. So I've got a lot of good friends. And to see these friends of mine getting the Dhamma and getting great benefit from the Dhamma is quite a joy. Is to see that the gift was successfully given and received. And so I like to teach the students. It's fun. And sometimes I grab my Zen stick and whack somebody from time to time. That's fun too.
I guess it's needed.
Yes. And basically the stick is to wakey. Wake up. That's what it's all about.
Mm.
Is to wake up, look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Isn't that a Zen stuff? Like when you arrive the first time and you ask for help or enlightenment or I don't know advices at the Zen temple, they give you 20 stick, 20. How do you say that? Well, they beat you with a stick basically first for coming here and not realizing at the beginning that you already have everything you need and etc. No,
That sounds like Zen.
that sounds like Zen, yeah.
I wasn't quite able to pick up what you were saying. Can you repeat?
Is that my accent or is that my connection?
It's your deep voice and my hearing combination.
Okay. So when you arrive at the Zen temple for the first time, seeking for advice or enlightenment or etc., I read that they welcome you with a stick and they beat you with a stick 20 times just for arriving and asking, because you already have it, the Buddhahood and everything. You just don't realize it. So they beat you first.
All right. Let me ask you this question. Do you believe that?
That they were doing that? For real? I don't care.
Okay. Do you believe that it's common and done throughout Japan or maybe only at one place?
It surely happened, yeah. I see the point in the story, because basically it's what you said. We are always in the past, always in the future. We don't see what is right under our nose. So we have some kind of.
Do you think it's possible for someone like yourself to hear such a story and get the same benefit out of it as the kid who actually got beaten 20 years?
Well, for me, I see, as I see the point in the story, yes, maybe, but maybe I don't see the full point. I really need the beating that I will understand better or more deeply in the flesh, you know. Who knows? It's more like an intellectual understanding right now than deep in the body, you see.
Well, I don't even know where to start about the Japanese.
I don't know if there is any need.
But the kind of story that you're talking about is typically Japanese and does not happen in all places in Buddhism. That, in fact, one of the ways that I would indicate of how to look not just at the teachings of the Buddha, but basically anything, and that is through the associative law of addition, or the associative law of multiplication, which is basically the same law, in regards of A times B plus A times C is equal to, pulling the A out, B plus C. Okay? In other words, B plus C is equal to, or times A, is equal to AB plus AC. And so A then is the common denominator. It's the common thread. We need to actually do that. And that's what we will have left of all of the Buddhisms all over the world. You can pull that out and you can recognize, the essence of what the Buddha taught is this. But because they don't beat students with a stick at every monastery in Thailand and Sri Lanka and Nepal, etc., like that, and maybe don't even do it all over Japan, maybe that's just one of the B's or the C's. That's not part of the core teaching. That's not A.
It's like the aesthetic of it, of that particular tradition.
Yeah, the decorum.
Mm-hmm. That various practices get set up at various places. Every Baptist church doesn't practice the same, nor does any religion. That every place is kind of unique on its own, based upon the history and traditions of that particular place. And that's true worldwide throughout humanity. It's part of our tribalism in a way. And so in another corner of Japan, their system is, unless you do the following, you can't join our club or be part of our group. And that is, you've got to spend the winter alone in a cabin in the high mountains without a fire and survive. And if you can survive the winter in a cabin at the top of the Japanese mountains for the winter, then you can join our group.
That's Shinto.
Mm-hmm. That's not Buddhist, actually. I didn't. Thanks for telling me. Because people do crazy things. They're trying to gain something through doing. To where the actual teaching is to gain something through wisdom, through seeing, through understanding what's going on. And by understanding, we can give up such austerities. In fact, both of those things, the beating of the new student and the mountaintop retreat, would be under the classification of austerities of what we would call Tudanga, which is the Pali word. And that the Buddha he wasn't in for any Tudanga. And so he was actually quite strict with what practices could be done, eliminating all of the others, like meat hooks to hold our selves and dangle from a tree by a rope connected to a meat hook. Those kinds of things were not allowed, or starvation and whatnot. that basically one of the Tudanga practices that is still practiced quite commonly right here on this island, in fact, right here on this porch, is barefoot, is to go barefoot every place. Whenever I go to town, I have to put the shoes on. So I wear shoes about once a month, depending upon what business there is. But mostly Tudanga is barefoot. So we kind of limit that stuff. With the point is that if you can't see a direct advantage of these austerities, then let's let them be aside. If we think that by practicing this austerity, I'm going to get something of value later, then that's magical thinking. So if I'm going to spend a month on the mountaintop, then that's going to make a man out of me, let's say, is the thought. No, the answer was, you were a man before you went up on the mountaintop. The only distinction is now you're willing to admit it to yourself.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, that is true.
And so it really does have a lot to do about attitude. If we can accept who it is that we are and take great joy in that, then we don't have to go out proving ourselves to do anything.
Yeah.
We don't have to engage in Tudanga or austerities. And so places that require the austerities are not actually part of the teachings of the Buddha. So we might say, well, why you go barefoot? The answer is because you have to watch where you're going. Being barefoot has the quality of, you've got to watch where you're going right now. It keeps you in the present moment. If you're not watching where you're going, you're going to step in a cow pie or something even less appealing. And so that's one of the qualities of being barefoot. So it's got advantage, exactly advantage. So when the monks are out on Tudanga, they carry a certain amount of stuff with them. And that all the things that they carry are actually necessities of life. One thing that they carry is actually a water filter. And what they do is use layers of their own robe as the filter itself. So they filter the water before they drink it. Another one is they normally carry fire making equipment. Another thing that they carry would be, and this is optional depending upon time of month, etc., a razor. They are also allowed all kinds of other things in their bowl, but normally it's easy to carry. The reason why they have a bowl, and by the way, that's another one of my pet peeves, is how badly translated the English version of the Pali is. Like using the word dukkha and translating it into suffering, when in fact it's not. Well, the word bowl is another one. The monks don't carry a bowl, they carry a pot. They carry a pot. Not only is it a pot in English, it's a pot in the Thai language, and it's a pot in the Pali. Even the Thais go on bendbat. The bat, that's the pot. And yet, how can it become a bowl? Oh, well, we don't allow pots on our altar. We have to have chalices and bowls and stuff. And so there's a bit of Christian influence in it. But the monks, that pot that he carries is of enormous value, especially if it's an iron one, because it can actually be used to heat up and thereby preserve food that may have gotten bad. So it has quite a number of uses, as well as being the main container for all of the stuff that he carries when he's out walking. So the other thing that they would carry would be an umbrella. But when the umbrella opens, it's got mosquito netting on the outside rim. So when he's laying down and sleeping under the umbrella, he's got a rainproof tent with the walls of the tent being mosquito netting. And yet the mosquito netting is really easy to pack back up into the umbrella, and he carries it on. And so this is the equipment that the Sangha monks do. And they still do that tradition here in Thailand. They're just wandering around, going from temple to temple. Part of the educational process. And I've seen it Wat Suan Mok many times, huge groups of Sangha monks who walk from all over Thailand to come to Wat Suan Mok for a particular occasion, so that there was like 400 or more of them there at the same time, which more than doubles the temple itself. So the whole field out there was covered in these umbrellas.
Surely a nice view.
Pardon?
Surely a nice view.
Yes, it's quite beautiful, in fact. So that is kind of a wandering around answer to your question about hitting the student 20 times before he goes into the temple. That's really unnecessary. Once we get him inside, then we'll beat the crap out of him, but we'll do it at the right time. At a time when he needs to get woke up. We'll save that Zen stick. We don't use it right away. We use it only when it's necessary, depending upon the training. One of the good uses of those Zen sticks is for the Zen master to sleep in, let us say, quietly walk into the dormitory and hit whatever student is still asleep.
Mm.
The whole point is that are you awake enough in the night so that if anybody comes into your room, you know he's there. And they actually train them that way in some Zen zones.
Yeah, I've been hit by one, and it's if you're awake, like, you know, and they just hit you, it's kind of like nice though at the same time, because it releases like a bunch of tension in your back and stuff. Like if you take it with like a grain of salt and don't take it personal, because some people do get mad, but yeah, it's funny though when it does happen.
Most of the stick, let us say, is manifested as noise because of the way that the stick is built. Normally a piece of bamboo that has a slit down through it, so that each one of the chambers of the natural bamboo, then when the things come together, is like a clap. So you've got 5 or 6 claps all happening at the same time, and that clapping noise that the stick makes is right in your ear. And so and the whole point of it is that it comes as a surprise. And in fact, the 10 shoulders that you were talking about, that's one of the signs that the teacher knows that only a piece of you know he's there. In other words, if you were fully alert that he's behind you looking for somebody to whack with that stick, you're going to sit up straight, you're going to put your shoulders down, etc. But if you were running on automatic pilot, then the hairs of the back of the neck will stand up and the shoulders will stiffen up and like that kind of stuff, while the student is still off in the hindrances, and he's the target. He's the one that the Zen master is going to hit with that stick, is the guy who's not paying attention. That's the whole point of it. And in fact, the Theravadas, they've got their own version of that. What Achan Po would do with me, and I really love him for this, is that he would stand outside the kuti, outside the little hut, kind of with the thought of, how long does it take for this guy to wake up to realize I'm out here? And that was quite a wake up. It's still a skill that I have. so that any time when Tam is coming around the corner, I know it. I know when someone is entering the property. That's how far we expand our kind of eye-cornered awareness, and also the sati of being awake, to keep looking. And that Ajahn Po actually did that with the training of just showing up. And he would do it just about every day. Who knows when it was going to happen.
That's
And so
nice.
it was the training. He'd show up, and how long did it take me to figure out that he's out there?
Yeah. And
The answer is I'm out there with him.
did Ajahn Chah ever do something like that to you?
I'm sorry?
Did Ajahn Chah ever do something like that to you?
Ajahn Chah? No, in fact, he was just a visitor at the Wat.
Okay,
No,
okay.
There's two uses or two values for the word Ajahn. One is the normal way that everyone in the West kind of understands the word. It comes, in fact, from the Pali word acharya, and that the Thai shorten everything down to Achan, and there's also no consistency in the way that it's spelled. In the North, they generally use a J, and in South Thailand, they normally use a CH. But that has more formal definitions in another context. It means that a man has been a monk or a nun has been a mechi for 10 years. Only then is one fully ordained. The first 5 years, you're under both the orders of the Achan and the Upajjhaya. And then you're able to travel on your own and go where you want to from 5 to 10 years. But you're not fully accepted into the Sangha until 10 years, and that's when you get the designation of Achan. Now you're one of the teachers. You're one of the group that, this is the insiders. The group of the insiders is normally the Achan. But then there's another one that I was just hinting at, and that is the relationship between the Upajjhaya and the Achan and the ordinate. The one who's becoming ordained, he does it with a whole bunch of other monks around, but it's a ceremony that is normally a conversation between the Upajjhaya and the Achan, so that the preceptor or the big dude has the most seniority and is often a polished public figure. My Upajjhaya was, in fact, the Samdat Sangaraj of South Thailand. He was the head dude of South Thailand. But he worked with Achan Po, so that Achan Po was actually the Achan in that ceremony. So now my relationship to Achan Po goes a kind of a foot deeper in the ground, in the sense that he was the one who was responsible for getting me ordained and for guiding me and teaching me. He was my Achan, rather than like Achan Samedo. I give him the word Achan because it's polite to do so, even though I knew him before he gained that title. But my Achan Po, that's a special relationship that I have with him because of that quality of the ordination itself and the guidance. And so he wouldn't have sent anybody else to my kuti to spring a trap on me to see if I'm paying attention or not. No, that was his job. And that he would also do really crazy things, like just walk up behind me when we're out and about, say, for breakfast or whatever, and he'd have a series of one-liners that he would use, all of them designed to wake up, okay? One of them that he would use often would be ta-ta-ta. We just come by and say, ta-ta-ta, and he'd walk on by. But part of the training was, I've got to know when he's coming to do ta-ta-ta on me. I got to turn around to greet him. He is not somebody that you let sneak up on you. that when he comes up and says ta-ta-ta to me, that's like a Zen hit. That's a stick. Wake up. And the word ta-ta-ta actually means be here now, which is exactly what he was requiring of me, is to be here now. Greet me when I come. Even if I come up intentionally behind you so that you don't know I'm there, you still have to know I'm there. That's part of the Zen training that the Theravadas also have as part of their bag of tricks, is to help wake these young monks up. But the Theravadas don't do it with a bamboo stick. They're more insidious.
They do it with greeting.
Yeah, they do. Right, they do it with weasel. And in fact, I'm kind of familiar and understand that, yes, Achan Po, in a way, was kind of a weasel. He was able to get things done that were just unbelievable, that he could get things done, and he didn't have to do anything. He would just weasel them together. Some people even called it magic, the magic of Achan Po, but he was really, the magic is that he was a really excellent weasel. And so this has then to do with the relationship and the training and the fondness that we have for the teachers, that unfortunately we can't do that on the internet. But we can tell stories about it because the stories have their own value. Because now we can substitute that. We can do new things. That we don't have to have Achan Po standing outside our door. That we can find other ways to wake up throughout the day.
I can ask my girlfriend to do that to me.
Yeah. Say, hey, I met this dude on the internet. He didn't have a shirt on, but he told me to tell you to kick your ass.
She will be very happy.
And surprise me. Yeah, sneak up behind me and see if I can figure out that you're there or not.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Or if you've got kids, you can actually help train them with this.
Yeah.
That we can actually play with our children to sneak up on them. Like my daughter, she is actually waking up.
You know that.
I know it because I mean, it's getting harder and harder for me to take her cell phone away from her.
Oh yeah, cell phone.
If she's watching that cell phone and not me, it's gone.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way of training that we don't have, but many people do pick this up with martial arts training. That this is part of what boot camp is supposed to be about, is to wake people up, tear out their ego, and make them soldiers. And they're not very successful at it, but that's how they want to go at it. So this Anapanasati has been more regimented by the Japanese than anywhere else, and is regimented right into their sports. One of the things that I'm a fan of is Zen and the art of archery. Though the way that I normally practice it, we call it Zen and the art of donuts. Because it's easier to throw donuts than it is to hurl arrows around our neighborhood. But the technique is the same. And that is paying attention to the body, paying attention to what we're doing, paying attention to whether the person receives a donut or not is not the point. Just like in the Zen and the art of archery, hitting the target is not the point. Was the arrow launched correctly, according to form and practice? And that's all defined then based upon anapanasati, the breathing, and the movements of the body.
Would you use art to do that?
Pardon?
Would you use art to do this kind of stuff?
An
Like
app?
exercise? Art.
Would I
Art,
use
like
art?
like painting or music or?
Actually, Zen is really connected to that, and that we have a very strong connection with art at Wat Suan Mok. One of the artists there went to India and was inspired by the relief and came back and did a huge amount of it at Wat Suan Mok in the years during the 40s and 50s, is basically when most of the art was done. We also have a lot of Zen art that was done by Emanuel Sherman, who was a Zen monk, and before that he was a commercial artist. So he settled eventually here at Wat Suan Mok, and in fact he died just 2 kilometers from here at Wat Khao Tum. But a huge amount of his art is on display at Wat Suan Mok. So there's a huge amount of art at Wat Suan Mok, but that's generally true of most Wats throughout Thailand. But sometimes it looks too Thai to be art. To where at Wat Suan Mok we've got a much bigger variety of it. A lot of Zen, a lot of Mahayana, a lot of Indian. We got Tonkas, all kinds of things. We've got skeletons nailed to the wall. Real ones.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because Ajahn Po and Ajahn Cha and all of those teachers, they all seem to like they pushed a wave of all the traditions kind of not opposing one another but coming together.
Yes, but I would say that Ajahn Cha and Ajahn Po were facilitators of that.
Yeah.
But that it was actually organized and managed partly with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, but also some of the insiders that he had. That is really amazing to see what very solid, high-quality connections he had. That, for instance, his teacher was the Samdet Sangharaj of all of Thailand. Now that's impressive. that was Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's teacher. Was the head monk of all of Thailand for like 1932 or 3, something like that, until I think until 1950. So he was the head monk at that time. And that he supported Bhikkhu Buddhadasa in his noble teaching to try to take Buddhism out of a magical system into a, and when I say magical, I'm also kind of talking about political also, into an actual practice that could be of enormous value to the individual practitioner. And part of the outcome of that, by the way, is down the highway from Wat Suan Mok is a major high school, big high school. And that high school is very much interrelated with Wat Suan Mok, so that we've got tons and tons of pictures of seeing a large group of students all dressed in the school clothing over at Wat Suan Mok doing meditation. And so it's got that connection with the school systems. It's got that connection with the royal family. But in fact, the Samdet Sangharaj that I mentioned, his name is Buddha Gosajarn, was actually his teacher in the Dhamma, was a prince who was born in 1860 and it was one of 47 children of the king of Siam named Mangut. And that after 8 years, he died when Vera was only 8 years old. His brother Chula Longhorn became the king. So this is old Thai history, and it also shows, quite surprisingly, how the noble Dhamma and the very best of the teaching of the Buddha was connected with the royal family of Thailand. And this is one of the reasons why, possibly the reason why, Thailand is the last remaining monarchy. Is because it was one that was capable of functioning. So when we see this connection with Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and recognize, oh, maybe that's got part to do why he was such a revolutionary, is that the government was actually supporting him. That in fact, the first time I saw the king of Thailand was at Wat Suan Mok, and the king was there to donate a well. That they brought this big rig, and before that, all we had was rainwater, so they had huge rainwater collection tanks. But the king of Thailand came and put a well at Wat Suan Mok. This is like 1986, something like that time. And so this was the kind of connection. Now, that's not to say that that was the only thing that the king of Thailand did. In fact, he was quite generous all over the kingdom of helping Wats and temples out. But he did know Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and when it was time for Bhikkhu Buddhadasa to die, the king offered his own private personal helicopter to come to Wat Suan Mok to take Bhikkhu Buddhadasa to Bangkok so that he could get the best medical care that Thailand had to offer. And Bhikkhu Buddhadasa turned him down. Listen, if the king of Thailand offers you his own personal helicopter for whatever reason, and you got to be a lion to turn him down. And so, in fact, it's actually known, and an old tradition of talking about the three lions of Thailand, and that Achan Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was one of these three lions. I don't think that Achan Cha or Mahaboa was one of them, but one of the names I'm missing. But I do know that a third one was Achan Panyananda, who was the abbot of Wat Chulapatan in Nonthaburi, which is basically the biggest temple in Thailand. Huge temple, 2,000 monks or so, as well as being a city Wat, which meant, in fact, when they first put a crematorium in, they put a crematorium that had two units in it. And within the first year, they had cremated 5,000. Can you imagine 5,000 in two crematoriums in 1 year? How could they do that? Well, it took about 2 hours, and so they started at 8 in the morning, and they went until about 8 at night, and they just burned one body after another. And the monks, there was enough monks to do the funeral ceremonies, and so it became a roaring business. But that's a side story. It's an interesting point. Before that, they used every funeral was done with banana trees. That they would take banana trees. Why? Because banana trees are so wet that they don't burn. And so they would use the outer post as banana trees, and then they would pile it with sticks and all kinds of stuff, and then put the body on top of that, and then pour lots of ghee, lots of butter, sometimes a lot of whiskey, and everybody throws their candle bundle on, or the incense or whatever, and that takes hours and hours. But in a gas-fired crematorium, it doesn't take that long. And so at the end of the oven, when I saw them cleaning it out one time, it was full of bones. Basically, they had to stop the crematorium long enough to let the thing cool off so that they could clean the thing out with all the bones that were still left in it. But this was a change in time. And I did spend some time at Wat Chulapatan in Bangkok. And so I knew Achan Panyananda, and he was one of those known tigers or lions, they called them, which is also the name of the Buddha. He called himself a lion. He was the one who was in charge here. And so that's the way of looking at it, is when we follow the teachings of the Buddha, our attitude becomes the attitude of a lion, that we feel really enormously successful, really enormously capable. Because why? Because we've actually been able to do the very hardest job there is for a human to do, and that is clean up his own mess. And once we get our own mess cleaned up, we have good bragging rights. And that is the joining the nobles, the Aryans, those who are living a noble life. And that noble life has to do with having a mind that's unified, that we don't lie, we tell the truth. We're not confused.
I present you my cat.
Hello, cat. Well, this conversation has been all over the map, but sometimes good conversations run that way. Do you have either one of you have any questions?
I do, but I don't want to go first.
No. First. Go on, please.
I was gonna ask you. Well, I don't know how long you want to keep doing this, going for this call, but I was gonna ask you about jhana, which is a huge topic, I know. So, and I just want to know, what is it, because there's so much talk and it's hard to really discern what it is and how to know when you actually are approaching that type of state of mind or something like that.
You're right. It's a long talk.
Yeah, exactly. So,
let me see if we can do 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
First off, before the Buddha was practicing austerities, which we've just talked about, he was practicing jhana and found that it wasn't what he was looking for.
Okay.
That should be an indication to anyone who is interested in Buddhism and runs across jhanas, is to understand that this is what the Buddha was failing at. He got very good at it.
Okay.
But normally what happens with the jhanas is that one is not good enough, we need two. Two not good enough, I want three, I want four, I want the whole pack, I want the big deal. This is called human greed. And so what happens then is that the greedy-minded practitioner is going to race out of first jhana into the higher jhanas without getting the benefit that he needs, that he's capable of, with this precious first jhana, which makes the mind fit for work, so that we can begin to control the thoughts rather than merely interested in shutting them off. Yeah. Because if we spend all of our time or enough time while we're, let us say, in second or higher jhana, then when we come out of jhana, we've made no improvements.
Yeah, they kind of suppress the defilements for a little bit.
Right. That's one way of saying it. Another way of saying it is, for a little while we're free from the defilements, to where in fact we need to figure out what they are so that we can deal with them successfully. And that's what we can do in first jhana.
Okay.
And that anapanasati practice is in fact the practice of taking the student into that first jhana. It's amazing to see the vocabulary is identical. And that sati, we wake the mind up. Then, like the Buddha says, I see you, Mara, I clean you out. Now we are beginning to think of thoughts that are wholesome or gladdening the mind, and we're not talking about the kind of thoughts that would be self-help books have adulations that we're supposed to give ourselves advice or whatever like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the same thing, because those are often aspirational in the sense of may I, which is also the way that most people practice metta meditation.
Which,
Of may I,
yeah.
in the sense of I can't, but I want to. All right. That's exactly the same kind of suffering as I want to be enlightened, but I'm not.
Mm.
Okay, so this is not aspirational. This is realizational in the sense of right now I do feel good. Right now I feel marvelous to be free from the hindrances.
Okay.
Let's see how long we can keep this lasting.
So would you
And
say that the second, third, and fourth jhana aren't necessary?
let us say it this way. Once you become enlightened enough to where you've got nothing left to do,
Okay.
so that you do reach the point where Busho says no place to go and nothing to do, and the spring comes and the grass grows by itself. When you get to that state, you still have 24 hours a day. What are you going
Yeah.
to do with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you can spend it with a laptop and do it very wholesomely. Or if you don't have that, you can sit and just enjoy your life.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
you can enjoy your life in one of these jhanas. But they are not the goal. They're
Yeah.
just merely an interesting way of structuring time once you know what to do with time.
Okay. Yeah. Because I have, like, people have experiences and things like that, and sometimes you think that you did it, like you really did something amazing, and then it turns out you can, and then something bad happens, and then all the displeasure comes back, and you realize that the jhana was absolutely stupid. Like sometimes, especially because I've had blissful experiences, and then the same day I do something horrible, like, or get upset or something like that, and that was a big disappointment. So I kind of wanted to ask that tonight.
So you're understanding that, yeah, very pleasant high states of mind don't solve the problems of everyday life. That we need a
Yes.
better
Yeah.
method of doing that. And
But I
so
thought at first that was it.
that's why we're practicing the way that we do. And that it
Okay.
does then, the practice of anapanasati basically means that we get the mind fit for work,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
means that now we know how to apply the mind and what to apply it to, and being able to sustain that. And the way that
Okay.
we sustain it is sustain it in the sense of I'm only going to allow wholesome thoughts, and I'm not going to entertain unwholesome thoughts. And how can I make that as a very quick discernment? Is unwholesome thoughts will pull me out of this state of satisfaction I'm in. And wholesome thoughts will keep me there. And so that's the way of looking at it. That's when we first started talking, I was talking about a light switch
Mm-hmm.
that is either on or is off. Okay. So when it's on, what do? We want to keep it turned on. But it's not. It's spring loaded somehow, or it automatically turns off. It's on a timer or something like that. But something happens and it flips the switch, and we're back into ordinary life again. And it will remain that way until we wake up again. And so we want to have that wake up happen very often.
Okay.
Okay. But in fact, even this first jhana that we're talking about that's so valuable, there is a path to it. And that path to it has to do with the path of continuously cleaning the hindrances out. Keep doing it. Keep throwing that junk out. Come back to this present moment over and over and over again, as if Achan Po was passing by saying, "Ta ta ta," means wakey, wakey, be here now. And so we start whispering that to ourselves more and more often, and we wake up more and more often.
Yeah, okay. That actually makes a lot of sense because arhants aren't always in jhanas. They're normal people too, in a sense. So yeah, okay.
They
So
walk
normal.
off and carry a big Zen stick.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely.
Well, excuse me for that. Got a bit of congestion. So we'll leave jhanas at that, but there's a whole lot more to be said about them, including how to move out of first jhana into second jhana.
Okay.
Because we actually need to learn how to control going into first jhana, maintain that, and that's the trick, so that we don't immediately jump into the second jhana, but we maintain this first jhana state, which means that the mind is set for, or is fit for work. And we have this sukha that we learn to maintain. And the way that we do that is by controlling what's in the mind. Wholesome thoughts are allowed, unwholesome thoughts are not allowed. And this is then a state that can be maintained over a long period of time, so that we begin then to inspect and understand what is wholesome thought and what is not wholesome thought, which would then be the next talk that we would have.
Funny, because I had that same question. I was like, what is a wholesome thought?
Maybe we should do that now.
Well, Sid, where are you? Your name is Sid?
Oh, Julian.
Julian. Okay, it says your name is Sid here. Okay.
Really?
Well, CID, but all right, Julian. Never mind. Excuse me.
Oh, that's because you didn't accept my invitation, I think. Because
Okay.
I see Dennis as CID also.
All right. Well, I wasn't there to accept your invitation. I just accepted your call. So we'll see that next time. All right,
No
Julian,
problem.
do you have any further questions about what we're talking about today?
No, not about what we are talking about today. No.
Okay. Well, welcome aboard. I'm glad to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you
And
very
I
much.
hope to see from you again soon.
I will try, yes.
Okay. Where are you?
I'm in Romania.
Wow.
In Romania?
Yeah.
Catalan, I think, is in Romania.
Yeah, he sent me to you.
Oh, 2 students in Romania.
The plant is growing.
Yes, it is. That's amazing. Well, welcome aboard. And I hope to see you again soon so that we begin to discuss this.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That would be nice, yeah.
Dennis, we'll see you later.
Definitely. I'll definitely see you soon again.
Okay. All righty. Well, bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.